Welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria, and of course to the beginning of our conversation. We earlier told you we'll be having two major discussions today on today's program. If you have been following our conversations, we have been discussing, of course, the task before the various ministries. Yesterday on this program, it was the turn of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. Dr. Betta Edu was on this show to, of course, share her perspectives and what her roadmap for the country. And right now, we're looking at Renewed Hope Agenda, the task before the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. And we have with us live in the studio Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, who is the Honorable Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security. He's a very familiar face and a friend of the House. He was a senator representing Niger North Senatorial District, that's in the 8th Assembly, and of course he was also a member of the 9th National Assembly, and most importantly, spokesperson in that during his session, and he was also the chief whip during the 9th Assembly. So let me most honorably welcome the distinguished senator and now honorable minister, Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, Honorable Minister, it's our pleasure to have you on to this segment of Good Morning Nigeria. Let's begin with what's on the face of it, that's appearances. The ministry for many years was known as Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Now there's a rechristening to the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. How significant is this, and what are you finding out as you settle down into office?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I bring you greetings from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, and in particular from my colleague, Senator Abubakar Kyari, who will have personally loved to be here, but he has another very high-level discussion bordering on the core mandate of food security, as we now come to put it, as one of the, like you asked, the christening of the ministry. Obviously, let me say that food security is very critical to any nation. And I don't think a nation that cannot feed itself, like they say, is definitely a very weak nation. And given the state of our country today, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, in his Renew Hope agenda, has upgraded our perspective, thinking, and actions on food security to the #1 national security or national priority. And, if you look at the 8-point agenda, the very first one is food security. So it is not, out of place. It has to do with his, very deep concern about the, state of, Nigerians. He has always talked about our humanity, and that in whatever we do as leaders, we must show that humane, concern for, every citizen who is a Nigerian. And if you also remember, in the 9th, Assembly, there was a constitutional amendment where the issue of food security was, properly polished and brought to the fore. And of course, it becomes, something that every government at all levels must show very grave concern for. In fact, it's been upgraded to a right. So I think putting all of this together, it's understandable that the presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu has upgraded that, subject matter, and hence, to put it more succinctly, the changing of the name from Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, to underscore the importance. Now, if you look at the challenges also, you can understand why definitely we are having that food security concern. There are a lot of people who are in conflict areas within the country, from the insurgency areas to the bandits, that is actually here and there. And it has actually challenged our food system. So overall, to bring that renewed hope to our food system, that is why the name was changed to Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. And of course, within the context of the 8-point agenda, food security has now become the #1 national priority. And you can understand that. Very, simply put, a hungry man is an angry man.
That's indeed, you're absolutely right there. I mean, it's obvious. When you are hungry, you're angry. The immediate past administration, perhaps we can say one of the areas where it had its footprints, was in agri sector. And that's because of, some of the policies, fiscal and monetary policies that enunciated, such as Anchor Bora's program and the setting up of NISA, where, of course, you make available services and funds, for farmers to access and all that. And at the time, that sector was also contributing, quite a lot to our GDP. Suddenly, agri sector just, was silenced all over. Have you been able to decipher, the gaps as you came in?
Well, let me say that, of course, we came in amidst all the challenges. And like you said, there were existing programs that were running. Government does not have vacuum. There's always continuity of actions. But what we're doing right now, since we came on board, is actually receiving briefing. But along the line, we had to cut off or stop the briefing because we had to attend to some very critical, programs that require decisions within the context of the national food security, programs that the ministry already has. For example, we intend to ensure that double cropping happens. Dry season, rainy season. We need to maximize the two, period. And so one of the dry season, crop that we do have within the context of irrigation and all the other issue is wheat. And, if you look at the bill, Nigeria imports over $2 billion worth of, wheat annually, $2 billion. So that is a huge, import bill. And we're trying to see what we can do to at least do something in-house to cut down on the volume. So within that context, there's an existing program that we met, which is just at its beginning. And we have to do all we can to make sure that we take certain decisions to push the program forward. In fact, that explains why even the minister, has to be, away, because we want to see what we can do to get the required seats. So a lot of work is happening within that context. Now, what I will say is that the briefings we have just been receiving, actually we just concluded yesterday. So the next couple of days, 2-3 days, we want to sit down and completely look at reviewing what already has been happening and see what is working and what has problem. So at the end of the day, we'll be able to decipher through all of this and come out with a realigned programs and projects that will be able to target national food security concern. And when you talk about food security, basically you are talking about 4 dimensions. Food has to be available. Now, if food is available, it must be accessible. At the same time, the 3rd dimension is that it must be affordable. And of course, the last dimension is that it must be in the required nutritional content and it must also be safe. So, and if you check in the renewed hope agenda, where President Ahmed Bola Tinubu has unveiled the 8-point agenda, the food security, which is #1, the main target there is that we are making reference to the Global Food Security Index. And in the Global Food Security Index, currently, for Nigeria, it is 91. The index is 91. And the task before us now is over the next 4 years, we want to bring that index back to 60, which means we must work on the dimensions of making sure we have sufficient production of all our food security crop, talking about maize, talking about rice, talking about cassava, talking about yam, talking about...
what's the implication of the 91 that, you know, what does it mean? Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
The rating here is saying that if it means maybe food, in terms of the weighting, there is a drop in availability of food, there is a drop in how people are able to access it. Accessibility is usually a function of transportation. And you will recall in the last, couple of years, we've been battling with, flood. Massive flood has cut off different parts of the country. And the implication is that food produced in certain parts are not able to be evacuated to, the required areas. So all of this has cut down, accessibility of food. And then, of course, by implication, also availability. Now, at the same time also, if you look at the areas where these productions are taking place, you need different, content. You need proteinous food, you need carbohydrate, you need fatty foods, you need, vegetables and all the other types of food that will give you the right mineral elements so that at the end of the day you have a well-balanced and healthy diet. Now, the implication here is that if all of this is happening, maybe certain crops or certain food type are not able to be available all over. And so all of this is taken into consideration. And of course, in terms of the safety also, for example, I'm sure there was a time you had issue about aflatoxins. Where, for example, you remember at a point Nigeria was banned from exportation because of the high aflatoxin. Now, where there is flooding, for example, cereal crops are not able to keep well. Because like maize, with moisture and all before you know what's happening, fungal growth. And so all of these things are the major concerns. And by the time you have things like this happening all over, the tendency is that it impacts negatively across these 4 dimensions. And so at the end of the day, when the assessment is made, your index goes higher.
Okay. Distinguished Senator and Honorable Minister, we've had you on Good Morning Nigeria in the past, and you often utilize your experience in the agricultural sector, before, of course, you became a senator, to explain some of the issues. But now, when we say food security, you mentioned it already, into 4 key areas. But some persons would argue further that, indeed, this is a huge assignment because of the entire value chain. Food security, as a philosophy, will drive agriculture, will drive production, will drive mechanization, will drive science and tech, and so on and so forth. What is it that you have heard since you came on board in terms of the briefings that you have received that gives you a sense of the nature of your mandate right now?
Well, the reality is that, there has been some element of consistency in the sense that the ministry is now being guided by some policy, document. For example, between 2011 or thereabout, you will have the agricultural transformation agenda, and after being implemented, by 2015, we have the agricultural promotion policy, and that one also was reviewed to the present agricultural technology and innovation policy. Now, all of this, at least there is a trajectory. And that trajectory is what is important to give consistency in terms of the policy and decisions that come out of the policy. So at least for the first time, I can say over more than a decade, we are all looking at the same direction in terms of what can we do to move agriculture away from the current subsistence level of production to a more commercially oriented and more, income generating kind of production system, so that our small and medium enterprises, farmers, and all the value chain actors will be able to make, meaning out of the endeavor within the value chains. Now, that itself is gladdening, which means we are now saying, oh, we recognize that there is a value chain for every commodity. And because there's a value chain, all you need to do is to begin to develop various activities and delayer some of the constraints and challenges within the context of the value chain. So I think that to me is gladdening, and of course there are areas you can build upon. Yes, there are areas that require a lot of changes, and that is what we are currently reviewing to see what works and what does not work and why is it not working. But most importantly also, we really want to bring back a situation where a Nigerian farmer can be proud to say, I'm a Nigerian farmer. That is what we are looking forward to in the Renew Hope agenda.
I'm an optimist, and I like it when people are very optimistic. So I share in this optimism. But let me take you down, to the ordinary.
Yeah.
I remember the president of All Farmers Association. We've had him several times here. Yes, and other farmers, when they come, they laud initiatives of government in ensuring that we were sufficient in rice production, and indeed we flaunted it, that Nigeria is sufficient, we can produce enough quantity of rice that we consume, all thanks to all the policies, but particularly the Anchor Borrowers program. Then the price of a bag of rice, was manageable, was affordable. I mean, ordinary, middle income earners could afford it. Now, in fact, the bag of rice is between 40 and 50, if not much more. And sometimes you don't even get to see the locally produced. Is there anything to suggest that we're no longer sufficient? I mean, what is happening from the blueprint and from the briefings that you are getting?
Well, I think let's not forget too quickly. Nigeria, I think in 2021, 2022, had very massive floods. And we may not see it clearly, but it impacted on production. A number of farms were swept off. Farmers had massive losses. And unfortunately, we have not really put in place a kind of insurance policy that will guarantee farmers getting some appeasement from the losses. And that is why if you ask those in the Anchor Borrowers program, there is challenge currently because, of course, farmers have lost. This is not their making. They've planted their field, they've done all they need to do in terms of the agronomic practices, what they call the good agricultural practices, and they were hopeful. But then the flood came and washed up the field. And this is where, if you look at Kogi State, if you look at even Niger State, if you look at Kebbi State, okay, and if you look at Jigawa, if you look at Kano, most of these states suffered grave flood and farmers lost. Now, one thing that people may not remember is that, you see, for the farmer, when he takes a decision to go into production, he's giving his all. He brings in everything he has to put in because he's hopeful. Now, when that hope is dashed, it takes a lot of effort before you are able to get him back. That, perhaps, is one of the problems that impacted on the rice industry. And currently, we are reviewing all of those challenges. Like I said, for us to achieve our mandate, there are things we need to do internal as a ministry and as a sector. But there are certain issues also that are critical. They are levers for attaining some of the dimensions of our mandate, but they are external to us. And I give you a classical example. If you take a look at the cost of transportation with the bad roads, like I've told you, some places the flood has cut off communities. And so the effort they do to get these things out has cost absorbed into it. And that itself makes the price of commodities to go up. Rice is not an exception because it also happens that because of the massive promotion that you've talked about, a lot of farmers have embraced it. And in some places like Kebbi State and all those places where they have access to water, they even do irrigation. So within that context, you agree with me that we need to do a lot. And I think in this Renew Hope agenda, you will see that we are committed to working together with all the various partners, and we want to look inwards first. The Federal Ministry of Water Resources is going to be a very key partner, and we definitely have to work together. And of course, we are going to review our Rural Access and Mobility Program, the RAMP, which was designed to ensure that farmers who are producing are supported in terms of the road infrastructure. And I think also we note with joy the renewed effort of the Ministry of Works to really work on Nigerian roads in a manner that those critical roads that are key to economic activities are given all the necessary attention. Because if you ask those who are in the transportation of agricultural commodities, if they tell you the challenge they face, you will now understand why affordability becomes an issue.
I mean, every Nigerian is aware of the challenges
those are the issues.
of debt of infrastructure. Yes. But let me just ask this question.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, from your expertise, and with what you know, is the price of rice likely ever to come down?
Sure. If we do the necessary things and work very hard. Right now, there is a lot of massive investment in milling. In those days, what we normally say is that the mills in Nigeria do not even have destoners. So when you are eating Nigerian rice, immediately you take 1 spoon, 2 spoons, the next thing is you are fighting with stone. I'm sure that is now history. A number of Nigerian rice are just, you eat them as smooth as you eat the imported ones.
Yes, but there's still work to be done.
Yeah?
There's still work to be done.
Yes, but what we're saying is that at least we have, something going on. I remember a moment in time in which I was involved in a particular big program we called Nigerian Rice. We did a summit. We were trying to even look at Nigerian rice quality and whatnot, and so on and so forth. So I believe we've come this far to improve upon what we're doing and never to stop. So we're going to review all of these things. And what we want to do is, within the context of the dimensions I've mentioned, we need to work on various components. We have different programs that are addressing most of these components across the subsectors, that is crops, livestock, fisheries. Then what is left next is the issue of nutrition. You can see the ministry now has a nutrition and food safety department now, which means we have now isolated an issue that is seen as common to something that is now getting all the necessary attention. And we intend to ensure that in doing all of this, we are now going to properly target the real farmer. By the time we are done with our assessment and we're going to unveil, we need to really consolidate on certain things that should become our main focus. Because the question we need to answer very seriously this time around is, who is a Nigerian farmer? Okay. And at the same time also, what is a Nigerian farm? If we say it's a smallholder farmer, what does that mean? Where are they? I think we made some efforts in terms of farmer enumeration. We're going to build on that. We're still trying to get the details of that effort that was done by the ministry. We understand from that effort, they've been able to georeference more than 6 million Nigerian farmers. So we're going to look into all of these things, because we must also bring IT. And if you check the 8-point agenda of Mr. President, he talked about inclusivity, trying to create that enabling environment that will bring more people into productive activities, in particular youths and women. Now, in doing this, definitely, we know the young Nigerian does not want to see himself as a farmer clutching a hoe and a cutlass or a machete. What they want is a farmer that can sit down using technology, using machine, what do you call it, mechanization, to produce massively with high productivity.
All right, I was just going to ask this, because oftentimes in our country, at least in recent years, the big stories about agriculture involve inputs, seedlings, seeds, and fertilizer. They make the stories because there are alleged shortages, alleged poor quality. How much of attention is this going to demand from you and the Honorable Minister?
Well, I will tell you, in fact, the Honorable Minister, I remember when we came on board, he said, well, I want to look at this thing from another direction. And one of the directions he said is, why can't we identify people who are serious and who are ready to produce? And the support, because all of the issues you talked about that are making headlines because of the subsidy input to them, where you give some support, that we look at those who will produce. It's on the basis of your production and what you have produced that we'll be able to say, okay, fine, government is going to help with subsidy to this extent. And that itself is a concept we're going to look at, because one of the things is there is no country that does agriculture without support. It's not possible. There are some externalities to farmers that you must take care of. A farmer should not be NEPA to himself. A farmer should not be Ministry of Works for himself. A farmer should not be Ministry of Water Resources for himself. There are areas where you must give them that support. And I think the issue of farm infrastructure is critical. NALDA is there, and we intend to also bring it on board to ensure that in terms of land preparation, which no matter how you have, no matter the quality of and goodness of the seed you have, if you don't prepare the land properly, you will not get the best out of it.
Okay,
very quickly, I want to throw this in because earlier I talked about insurance. Are commodity boards part of your consideration?
Well, I understand from what we have seen, there are one or two areas, and of course, you know, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu has expressed willingness and readiness to look at that particular subject. So absolutely, we're going to review it. There's quite a number of experience, and there are some efforts that have been made in the past. We are going to bring all of them on the board to see why are we not able to make headway on this area. And when we do, definitely we're going to take a look at it. And then with respect to fertilizer and all the other things you have mentioned, the seed council and the seed system, we are also taking a very critical look at it. Because people may not know this. For you to plant a seed this year, you must have started working for it for the past 3 years. From breeder seed to foundation stage 1, foundation stage 2, which is the certified seed. So this system, more or less what we have seen, we're not satisfied, and we're already having serious discussions with all the stakeholders in that sector with a view to correcting, so that a farmer does not just go and collect a seed and then he makes all the effort, all he ends up with is growth without, you know, what did they call it? So we are taking a look at all of these things. The system itself has been optimized with mandates and functions of people to take care of some of these concerns. We are going to get them to work, and we intend to ensure that overall, that target of food security, we are going to work very hard to make sure we are able to move it away from the current
the last question, just before we let you go, Honorable Minister. Do you think that you were given, you know, this sector the urgency that it deserves, that Nigerians wants to see, considering, you know, the economic situation? And how long, when do you think you will be able to come back to this program and talk to us more, you know, in depth, give us an in-depth, you know, conversation?
Well, let me tell you this. Urgency is key. But you see, when you do hasty decisions in an urgent situation, you end up wasting your time and not achieving your goal. We are very, very mindful of the weight of responsibility placed on the two of us. Senator Abubakar Kyari has his own experience, and together we have all agreed that this time around, you know, you hear of the phrase, think outside the box. This time around, we've agreed we are going to think without the box to move Nigerian agriculture forward.
Which means there's nothing inside the box.
No, we are not. In fact, we're not even seeing the box. We are going to think without the box. This is aimed at allowing us to have a very open mind to accepting things. And I'm sure if a letter has not come to NTA, a letter will come very soon. We know NTA has been very upright in helping to discuss this subject matter of agriculture over the past 5 or more years. I've been here a couple of times, in my personal capacity on that subject. But what we are saying also is that many brilliant Nigerians have made very good recommendations on this your program. And we are going to ask NTA to oblige us a summary, a synthesis of all those recommendations, including experts that have contributed. This is to enable us sit down together. We are bringing all the resources Nigeria has together to put it on the table for the benefit of renewing hope agenda of Mr. President. So we are not going to fold our arms. We are not going to fold our arms. And you remember, we are talking about food security, but we are also having the potential to contribute to job creation and economic growth. In fact, the aspect of GDP you talked about, we are not happy with the fact that Nigerians' GDP has remained stagnant at 2.23 point something at thereabout. We want it to come down, because when you do, it means you are having less people producing more in terms of productivity. It's when you have agriculture contributing less to the GDP that your productivity index in terms of the system goes high.
All right, Honorable Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, I'm really constrained to stop at at this point. And like I said, hopefully we will bring you and the Honorable Minister himself to this discussion to give us more information on what has been done. I would like to appreciate you and thank you. The Honorable Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security served as a senator representing Niger North Senatorial District, and he was a Senate spokesperson in the 8th Assembly and Chief Whip in the 9th Assembly.
Deputy Chief
Deputy Chief Whip, I beg your pardon. All right, Kingsley.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, we have a second topic, which is on the State and National Assembly election petition tribunals that have been delivering their judgments. At least the tribunals for the National Assembly are expected to wrap up their sittings by the close of this week. Now, before we commence that conversation, let's listen to this background put together by our correspondent, Abdulsalam Jibril.